History greets us with a view of the seaport of Liet. The seagull sits calmly and notices a sailing ship approaching in the distance. After some time, a huge sailing ship stops at the port of a sea city. The guy says it finally happened. He raises his hands and shouts joyfully that they have finally reached the city. A sweet girl tells a passerby that he can only buy the potion after doing her a favor. The fisherman sells a variety of seafood, ranging from sharks, octopuses, and ending with regular fish. Various conversations can be heard from everywhere. Everyone is busy with their own business and trying to attract new clients. Raymond looks at this city with shining eyes. Walker approaches him and asks if he is glad that he was in this city. Without waiting for an answer, he immediately answers his own question, because he perfectly understands from the guy's eyes that he is incredibly happy to be here. Theron says he wants to tell everyone in this port how he feels. He feels only one thing: joy. And there is a reason for that. He looks at the building and says that their adventures will begin here. This is the time when adventurers from all over the world write their own stories of epic journeys. The gates are mysterious portals that have suddenly begun to appear all over the world. These gates lead to worlds where terrifying monsters unknown to people live. Countless adventurers died inside the gate. However, the rewards of winning undoubtedly outweigh the risks. This forces ambitious people to continue to try new worlds, each time hoping to receive worthy rewards. We move to Walker, who says that they need bait. Raymond looks at Walker a little surprised. Walker then explains everything. They can't come up with a strategy before entering the gate because they don't know what to expect. Adventurers in many seasons lost their lives in unforeseen circumstances precisely for this reason. And because of this, recently adventurers have often begun to hire decoy slaves. The girl asks if he means those people who will distract the attention of the monsters while they run away from the battlefield. If yes, then the idea sounds good. The scene changes, and we see several slaves. Walker walks around the torch-lit room, followed by a man who says he's glad to see a new customer here. This place is owned and operated by the Gapur Trade Guild. Everyone who is here is a bait slave. The man hopes that the buyer will be able to find suitable products from them. He tells Walker that the slaves are guaranteed to recoup their costs, and if he allows, he can recommend those two slaves. He just recently received them, so they are relatively fresh. Walker looks at the two slaves for a few seconds and agrees to buy both of them at once. The man thanks Walker and wishes the adventurers good luck in their future travels. Soon Walker and his team and two slaves reach those very gates. He approaches the tree, examines it carefully, and then says that adventurers leave marks on the tree trunk, showing how many teams entered this particular gate. And there is not a single mark on this tree. This means that they will be the first to enter this gate. With these thoughts, he proudly grabs the dagger and makes a mark on the tree trunk. He turns to the team and asks if they are ready. From their smiling expressions, he immediately understands that the team does not have the slightest doubt. Walker orders everyone to follow him. The team passes through the gate and finds themselves in a forested area. Raymond says it's a strange feeling, probably because it was his first time going through the gate. Then he raises his head, and a look of surprise appears on his face. He looks around and sees a huge number of giant mushrooms around him. Raymond had never been to such an amazing place before. Inside the gate, the atmosphere was not at all what he had imagined before. Walker understands the guy's surprise, but asks him to remain quiet and focused. The portal usually opens far from the monster's lair, so they are safe for now. But it's not that simple. It is impossible to leave the same way they came. Their main task is to determine the location of the exit gate. The girl calmly follows the squad leader, but suddenly hears strange sounds behind her and turns around. As soon as she turns around, the monster immediately attacks her. He bites the girl. A huge amount of blood pours out of her body. Hearing strange sounds behind, the team turns around and is surprised to find a monster nearby. But why? How did it get here? Charlotte seems to disappear, and the monster is preparing to attack the rest of the people. But the monster is not alone here. In the blink of an eye, Walker's squad is surrounded by a flock of monsters who clearly do not intend to invite people to a tea party. Walker uses a staff, and with the help of magic, he turns it into a bow, preparing to shoot a fiery arrow at the monsters. He fires and hits the target. He also realizes that something is wrong, and orders the slaves to be tied to a tree. While they distract the monsters, they need to get out of here. One of the slaves asks to help them and take them with him, but Theron threatens him with a knife, ordering him to close his mouth and stand still. Raymond ties the chains around the tree trunk, and through his teeth, in a quiet voice, repeats that he is sorry that this happened. The slave shouts that they cannot leave them here, but Walker and the squad do not even think about returning. but run as fast as they can away from the monsters. The slave is attacked by a monster, inflicting mortal wounds on him. Meanwhile, the second slave watches as the monster mercilessly eats the other slave. The clawed paw of the monster is already very close and is preparing to grab its prey. Charlotte miraculously survives. Walker carries her unconscious body, and together with the rest of the squad, they continue to move deeper into the forest. Walker says that the task is postponed. Now they need to forget about hunting monsters. It is much more important to find a way out, and preferably quickly. Raymond does not hear the commander. Everything is as if in a fog. He does not realize where is reality and where is illusion. Theron notices this and grabs the guy by the clothes and screams for him to finally wake up. And it works. He understands the horror that Raymond feels. Yes, their adventure failed completely this time, but they can prepare better and try again in the future. It's too early to give up. You can't let your guard down. Theron proudly declares that they will all survive together. He only loses his vigilance for a moment, and this becomes his fatal mistake. The monster suddenly lands on him and delivers a powerful blow with its huge paw. Walker, with a genuine expression of horror on his face, looks towards the monster and shouts his comrade's name in the hope of hearing an answer. His hope that Theron survived turns out to be futile. The monster only had one moment to deal with the man. Shocked, Raymond falls to the ground and looks at the dead body of the team member. Walker succumbs to anger and intends to take revenge on the monster for killing his comrade. However, the monster does not care about these threats. It opens its mouth and releases a long tongue. With this tongue, the monster grabs Walker by the neck. He quickly pulls Walker towards him. Walker tries to free himself, but realizing that the monster has a death grip on him, he calls his allies for help. A moment later, the crunching of bones is heard. Heart-rending cries of pain and despair are heard. But soon silence sets in, and a huge amount of blood spills onto the ground. Raymond looks at what is happening in horror, having just seen 2 comrades killed before his eyes in less than a minute. For the first time in his life, he experiences primitive animal horror. The monsters begin to approach. Raymond crawls back in horror and calls for help. The monster's entire mouth is covered in the blood of the guy's dead comrades, and now the monster is preparing to taste a new portion of human meat. He grabs Raymond's leg, pulls it towards him, and then bites it off with sharp fangs. Incredible pain permeates Raymond's entire body, who is unable to hold back his scream. He continues to scream while someone is watching him from a tree. Raymond falls into despair. His face becomes covered with tears. He has already lost one leg, so now he can no longer escape from the monster. Suddenly he notices a guy standing on a tree branch watching him. This guy turns out to be one of the slaves that Walker recently bought. And the fact that the slave they were counting on to use as bait survived is incredibly surprising to Raymond. At such a difficult moment, he feels relieved to see that at least someone survived. He raises his hand and asks the slave to help him. Everyone died, only the 2 of them remained. Raymond apologizes for what happened, for tying them to a tree, but he also says that he was against this idea. He claims that a slave cannot get out of here alone. They need to work together, so Raymond asks the slave to save him. The slave's response is silence. He does not even budge to somehow help Raymond. Raymond shouts to the slave to stop standing idly by and help him, while Raymond also manages, in a fit of emotion, to call the slave a freak. But the slave does not even get angry with him, and does not try to call him names in response. He responds to such rudeness with a simple smile. After this, he jumps from the tree. The slave says that no matter how much he wants to help the guy, it's too late. After these words, Raymond realizes that while he was begging the slave to save him, the monster was slowly pulling his body into its mouth. There is indescribable horror in his eyes, from the realization that he can no longer escape. Realizing that the slave will not save him, Raymond calls him an idiot. Does he really believe that he can survive on his own? Raymond accepts the fact that his death is already inevitable, but he is sure of one thing: the slave's turn will soon come. These words become the last for Raymond. The monster clenches its jaw and ends the guy's life cycle. However, his desire to tear apart human bodies has not gone away, and right now, there is another potential victim in front of him. Almost completely smeared in blood, the monster growls menacingly, looking at the only surviving person. The slave behaves absolutely calmly, as if he knows that the monster will not cause him problems. The monster is preparing to make a sharp leap towards the guy. It plants its feet on the ground and then jumps at a furious speed. The slave is still standing motionless, and the monster looks at him greedily and licks his lips, anticipating how he will now taste a new portion of human meat. However, the guy looks at the monster with a cold and concentrated gaze, in which there is no fear. He begins to spin the spear and says out loud that he can survive. With these thoughts, The guy lunges towards the monster, and with one blow makes a huge hole in it. The monster receives wounds incompatible with life and falls to the ground dead. The guy doesn't just think he can survive. There is one rather interesting reason for this. This is not where he died. History moves to another place. A small group of people stands on a rocky cliff, and in the distance a huge flock of winged creatures is seen approaching. The girl looks into the distance and says that he is approaching. These winged creatures are partly human-like, but more like the dragons that they are. Compared to an ordinary person, these creatures are not small, but even they are negligible compared to this giant. This giant is the Horntail, the king of dragons with 3 heads. It turns out that the centaur's nest was also destroyed. The girl says. She says that they have no one else to rely on here. From the Knights of Cygnus, the Resistance, the Crusade Hunters and Adventurers, to the 6 heroes upon whom the people placed their hopes, all are dead. Absolutely everyone died. Only he remained. The last adventurer named Elpam is our main character. The guy says it's time to go, because they are already waiting. He is about to say what or who is waiting for them, but suddenly he becomes silent. A huge shadow of a dragon's head rises above them. The Dragon King flies towards the squad, opening his huge mouth dotted with sharp fangs. After this, some time passes. The entire forest burns with fire. The main character looks exhausted. All his clothes are practically covered in blood. All those who recently stood on the cliff died, everyone except him. Near the guy lies the severed head of a dragon. He looks up and asks himself, is this the end? He watches the Dragon King fly over him, missing one of his heads. It would seem that one can be glad that they managed to cut off at least one head, but not everything is so simple. They survived a strong blow, managed to cut off one head, only to see it restored again. All their efforts were in vain. The Dragon King notices the last survivor, and again opens his mouth and flies towards him. For a few more moments, Elpam consoles himself with the hope that everything will change. But soon he tells himself that this is the end. This is the end of their world and adventure. But suddenly he hits the ground with all his might. He decides to throw despair to hell. There is only one thought in his head. Everything cannot end like this. Philip, Jaden, and Elysis, each of them gave their lives. Elpam refuses to accept that these people's deaths were in vain. Overcoming unbearable pain throughout his body, he rises from the earth. In his gaze one can read monstrous pain and hatred. He looks at the Dragon King who dared to destroy them. He does not agree to die so easily, without even avenging his comrades. He extends his hand forward, and a ball appears near it. Magical energy begins to accumulate above the guy. He puts all his strength and vital energy into this blow. He is ready to kill the dragon at any cost, even if it is the last thing he manages to do. Suddenly, the magic ball located near his hand disappears. Time seems to stop for him, and a new wave of pain rolls through his body. He spits out the scarlet liquid, almost being choked by it. Meanwhile, the dragon prepares to strike the final blow. It releases dark purple flames from its mouth. He is so weakened that he does not even try to escape or defend himself in any way. He humbly accepts his sad fate. But why does the end have to be exactly like this? If only he had more power. If he could start all over again to prevent such a sad outcome, everything would have gone differently. Suddenly, the main character feels like he is being doused with cold water. He sits on the floor and does not understand what is happening. A slave trader stands near Elpam, who decides to cheer up the guy by splashing cold water on him. However, Elpam is not at all concerned about this man. He is trying to understand what the hell is happening, and where is the Horntail? Wait, is he still alive? But how is this possible? Because he definitely saw how the Horntail fired a huge stream of flame at him. Elpam looks around and notices several people in dirty clothes and with wooden handcuffs on their hands. He then looks at his hands and notices the same handcuffs those people had. He looks around again and discovers a large number of cells with people, and other people are walking nearby, looking at the prisoners behind the metal barriers. After thinking about it all for a few seconds, he realizes that this is a slave market. Damn, this is some kind of nonsense. He knows for sure that such markets were banned a long time ago, but he is completely sure that this is a market where slaves are traded. He peers into the man's face and recognizes him. If he has not confused anything, then this is the same merchant who bought him at the market 6 years ago, when he was already a slave. Looking carefully at his face again, he is convinced that this is the same person. A thought arises in Elpam's head. If he really ended up here, does this mean that he went back in time? And while Elpam is thinking about the current situation, the man begins to get angry because the guy is silent and does not answer his questions. To teach the naughty slave a lesson, he prepares to punch him in the face to knock the crap out of him. Elpam is once again convinced that he returned exactly on that day, at the moment when it all began. He remains in thought for some time. Maybe he is dreaming. It's unlikely. The sensations are too real to be mere fantasy. The assumption that this is a bad dream makes no sense, because he sees no other explanation other than the fact that he really returned to the past. Walker, Theron, Elpam, all these faces were already familiar to him. It is unknown how, and it is unknown why, but he was given a second chance, and he is not going to waste such an opportunity. Now we return exactly to the moment when Walker's entire squad dies, and the main character remains the only survivor. He picks up the fire arrow staff that Walker once wielded from the ground. He managed to see what the staff is capable of in real combat, so this ability is quite good. Now such a thing will suit him perfectly, given that he is on his own and there is no one to expect help from. However, the staff alone will not be enough for him, and adventurers usually bring more than one valuable thing with them. If they plan to farm here, then they must have something else besides the staff. Elpam's attention is drawn to Walker's leg, the only part of his body that remains. He recalls that some adventurers hide valuables in their shoes. He removes Walker's foot from his boot to see if there is anything valuable there. After examining the shoes of the deceased adventurer, the main character finds a ring and puts it on his finger. As soon as he puts the ring on his finger, it begins to glow brightly, and Elpam realizes that it is a telekinesis ring. He then hears the sound of a huge number of footsteps approaching. He notices a flock of monsters running towards him from the depths of the forest. Elpam decides that they came to the smell of blood, which has already been spilled across this land enough to attract the attention of such wild creatures. The monsters are quickly approaching Elpam. One of them even decides to jump in order to quickly get to the last survivor. In a matter of moments, the main character deals with the annoying monster. Another monster decides to use a long tongue to grab Elpam. At the last moment, the main character turns around and substitutes a spear so that the monster's tongue does not reach him. This plan works, and the monster's tongue actually grabs the spear, but the creature presses the spear with its tongue with such force that it shatters into pieces. From Elpam's surprised reaction, one can understand that he was clearly not prepared for the fact that these creatures were capable of such a thing, and while he is still a little shocked, the monster has already come close to him from behind. Elpam quickly jumps to the side and uses a fire arrow on the monster. He also realizes that the staff alone will not be enough and decides to try out the ring. Using a staff and a ring of telekinesis, he spins a fiery arrow, thanks to which he immediately deals with all the monsters nearby. Although he easily undressed with the creatures, he understands that he will not be able to hold them for long. Meanwhile, new monsters are approaching from the forest. Elpam decides to use the fire arrow once again to destroy several more creatures. However, to his surprise, he discovers that the staff does not work. Elpam almost loses his life, but manages to jump away at the last moment, but he still cannot understand why he failed to activate the fire arrow. He examines the staff for damage, but finds nothing. The staff is not broken. Then he has a new guess. Maybe the staff has a cooldown time. And at that very moment, while he is jumping away from the monsters, another creature approaches him from the side. He lands on the ground and prepares to fight back the monsters. Well, since he can't use the magical power of the staff, he has no choice but to use it as a kind of bat to beat up monsters. Elpam hits the monster with such incredible speed that the creature cannot even attack him. Every attempt to inflict damage is immediately stopped by a high-speed blow from the staff. The monster falls to the ground, and the main character leans his leg against it. He pushes the monster as hard as he can to get to a safe distance. Elpam looks at the staff again to see if it can now work normally. Luckily, yes, after a while the staff recharges, and magical energy appears around it. The staff is recharging at just the right moment, because right now, 3 monsters are rushing at the main character at once. Elpam is not going to retreat. Now he has an undoubted advantage over them. He concentrates and fires a fire arrow. Having tested the telekinesis ring in action, he decides to try the same trick again. However, now Elpam does not direct the fire in a circular path. Now he directs it at each monster separately, leaving no one a chance to survive. After a few moments, he destroys the last monster. Although Elpam is sure that there are no monsters nearby, he looks around just in case to make sure that none of the monsters are alive. Suddenly, he hears a woman's voice. The girl from Walker's squad miraculously survives and tells the main character that he is clearly not an ordinary decoy slave. Elpam is surprised that she is still alive. With so many wounds, the girl is trying to figure out who the hell the main character is. This fighting ability and magic is clearly not inherent in a simple slave. While the girl continues to talk, Elpam mentally calls her lucky, although the state in which she is now can hardly be called lucky, so he takes his words back. She asks why he has Walker's staff. She also notices a ring around her wrist. She is confused because she does not understand how the slave they wanted to use as bait was able to awaken such powers. Then the girl, with a trembling voice, says to the main character, "No, please, just don't say that this anomaly happened because of you." Elpham answers the girl with silence. In his gaze, one can read the hatred and contempt that he feels towards her. After standing like that for a few more seconds, without saying a word, Elpham asks if she finished speaking. The girl asks in bewilderment, "What?" Elpham replies that she is mistaken. This anomaly did not happen because of him, although it doesn't even matter if the others survived, because he was going to kill her anyway. She used people as bait, disposed of other people's lives in order to save her own life at the most difficult moment, and leave others to their fate. The main character despises and hates people like her with all his soul, and such people do not deserve forgiveness. The rest of the story continues in the same sea city where it all began. Surprised people look somewhere and cannot believe their eyes. Some of them ask, "Is this really true?" They pay attention to a man who is slowly walking along a city street. This person turns out to be our main character, who instantly attracts the attention of passers-by, because it is unusual for them for a bait slave to return alive alone. Elpham doesn't pay attention to the conversations among the crowd. The die has already been cast, and he needs to act quickly to avoid the same fate. But everything needs to be done in order. First of all, he decides to get rid of his slave status. After this, the story moves to Abby's. He asks his subordinate if he understood correctly that the slave returned alive. The man tells him that everything is so. He managed to find out that the slave arrived unharmed, to which Abbas asks, "What's wrong with that? Is it any wonder that the decoy slave returned uninjured?" The Abbeys prepare to light a cigar, and the man says that all the adventurers from the team that included the slave died at the gate. "Wait, are you saying he survived on his own?" asks Abbes. Now this sounds really strange to him. Moreover, the slave decided to provide a report rather than run away. Those who have become slaves due to huge debts cannot escape the fate of being used as bait again. Since the slave did not try to escape, it means he realizes how difficult it is to hide from the guild. In the end, death is the only path to freedom for them. This is how things are done in their trade guild, Kapoor. Abbas understands that the situation can be said to be unusual, but he asks his subordinate whether it is necessary to report to him about such trifles. The man tells Abbes that there is something else he needs to know. It became known that this slave awakened the first circle. After these words, bewilderment appears on Abbas's face. A decoy slave with a circle. Is that even possible? He probably has a bad opinion of their guild, since he was a slave. The situation is becoming more interesting every moment. Abbas is already quite surprised, but the man does not stop and says that he was told that the slave is asking to change his contract. Abbas asks if he really means the contract. The man replies that Mr. Abbas understood everything correctly. The slave wants to register as an adventurer. Abbas is furious at such impudence, but it turns out that Mr. Larkin asked him to personally deal with this situation. Abbas abruptly stands up from the table and cannot believe his ears. He can't understand why the executive head of the guild would be interested in a smelly slave. However, since such a high-ranking person in the guild told him to deal with it, he has no choice but to obey the order. Suddenly his attention is drawn to a small stack of books and various journals with notes. The man who reported to him about the situation with the main character leaves the office, and Abbas is left alone with his thoughts. He looks out the window and says, A decoy slave who wants to become an adventurer sounds interesting. As for slavery itself, it was abolished in the name of Emperor Cygnus, but only conditionally. People have always been slaves of mesos, which is what local money is called. Those who could not pay the debt on time were obliged to work it off. This simple law brought slaves into the world of Maple. When the protagonist's father, the only family he had, died of illness, he became one of them. He purchased the ingredient black moss from the trade guild to cure his father, promising to pay later. The guild demanded 1,000,000 mesos, which was several times the market price. Elpham was unable to pay such a huge sum, and therefore he was put on trial. He was accused of failing to pay the merchant guild 1,000,000 mesos on time. Elpham was found guilty and ordered to do work for the guild within a specified time. For 6 years these bastards exploited Elpham, seeing in him only a submissive tool that brings them money. But now, the time has come to take revenge on them. Abbas called the main character to his office to deal with the situation. Elpham peers into the man's face and recognizes him as Abbas, a loyal servant of Larkana, one of the executive heads of the guild. Abbas says that he heard that the main character wants to make changes to the contract, so he suggests getting straight to the point, since he already knows enough about it. He takes a few more sips of the hot drink and then places the mug on the table. Abby says he will register Elpam as an F-rank adventurer. Elpam notices that the man agrees to his proposal quite easily. However, he does not intend to play by the guild's rules. Elpam demands that he be given an E rank. Abby's is perplexed by such a request, because even the Association of Adventurers has not officially recognized him. Elpam explains the request by saying that he has passed through the gate as a decoy slave hundreds of times over the past 3 years. Abbas completely agrees with Elpam's words, but notes that he went through so many gates only as bait. He is still new to killing monsters. Elpam then asks, since when are adventurers judged by their ability to hunt monsters? The first adventurer earned great fame for his survival skills. The main goal of any adventurer is to return alive from the journey. Abbas understands that this is indeed true, because the information that a survivor will bring is much more valuable than military merits. He answers the main character that he says reasonable things, and to be honest, the fact that he survived and came back a ton of times as a decoy is quite an achievement. However, that's all. No more, no less. Lures are taken only at the gates of the lower level. Does Elpam really believe that his meager survival skills will save him in a high-level gate? Abbas takes out a cigar and says that Elpam is very mistaken if he considers them to be cretins who would sign a contract with a self-confident idiot. He lights a cigar, and looking at the guy, thinks that if he continues to overestimate himself, he will die very soon. However, his intuition tells him something about him, as if trying to convince him that this guy is not so hopeless. Abbas tells the protagonist that there is a gate with a limit of 5 people and 12 marks on the tree trunk. Yes, he understood everything correctly. This means that at least 12 groups of 5 people entered there and did not return. If Elpam wants to get the E rank, then he must prove that he is worthy of the rank he is asking for. Abbas is ready to fulfill the wish of the protagonist, but only on the condition that he copes with this gate. Then the story continues in the forest area. Elpam meets with a group of 4 people. Their commander comes out to him, who already knows that Elpam is the same newcomer who is joining them. This guy's name is Shev. He is not only the commander, but also the tank of the team. Abbas had already told him that the main character used to be a decoy slave. Shev assures that Elpam shouldn't worry about this, because he and his team don't really care about the fact that he was a slave. Elpam says he's glad to meet you. Shev responds by saying that he also heard that Elpam can use fire magic. One of the team members approaches Shev and asks if not all magic is available to magicians. No, magicians can only control the element to which they are predisposed from birth. For this reason, it is useless for them to take an item that does not go with their element. Shev realizes that he has moved away from the main topic of conversation and returns to it. As the main character has probably already heard, their goal on this mission is not to hunt monsters. They need to return items that were dropped by the other 12 teams that came here before them. That's all they need to do. The guild is willing to pay 3,000 mesos for each item. Max complains that the prices are not justifiably low, because those adventurers had 1 circle each, which means their items cost at least 7,000 mesos. Another team member tells him to stop complaining. Max explains that he wasn't complaining. He was just upset by the low price. Shev says, stop the useless talk, and orders the team to follow him into the gate. It's time to make a lot of money. Once they pass through the gate, they find themselves in an area similar to the one the protagonist was in recently, but this forest appears darker. Max says that, despite the fact that it is still light here, the atmosphere around is eerie. Shev grabs the attention and says that the mission will most likely take a long time, judging by the terrain, so they need to set up camps. He is offered to camp at the top of a tree. There are many branches there. They will hide behind them, and from above it will be more convenient to look for a better place. And if anything happens, they will be able to notice monsters in the distance. Shev replies that it's not a bad idea. That's what they'll do. To build the camp, they get a bag of huge nails and rope. Max tells the main character that he can rest for now, because he and the dumbass are experts in construction, so they will take care of the camp. After some time, the guys complete their work. At the top of the tree, there is now a ready-made camp for the whole team. And since everything is ready, the commander suggests splitting into 2 groups and exploring the area. Tom, Max, and Rod will go together. He and Elpam will check the western side. The others will check the eastern side. If something unexpected happens, you need to immediately give a signal and quickly return to base. After this, The team splits up, with Chev and Elpem going to explore the western side of the forest, while the rest head to the eastern side. Chev points out that there are no monsters visible here. They probably set up camp too close to the entrance. Tomorrow they will go deeper into the forest. He asks Elpem how his first assignment as an adventurer was. Elpem says that he is nervous, and the team leader humorously replies that he understands him. Even though he has gained some experience, he still gets emotional every time he enters the gate. He is still not the bravest person in the world. He simply has the instinct of self-preservation, but he continues to boldly step forward because he is surrounded by people who matter to him. He actually felt very sorry when he first heard Elpem's story. A decoy slave, it's hard to even imagine how hard it was for him. Everyone saw him not as a person, but only as a living creature who, in case of danger, would distract the monster at the cost of his own life. Chev turns to the main character and says that if he wants, he can join the team forever. He notices that Elpem stopped without saying a word. Chev addresses him again with humor, telling him not to take his words too seriously. However, the main character is not at all concerned about the words spoken by the team commander. All his attention is focused on the strange mark on the ground. He looks like something melted him. Soon night falls. The team returns to the camp and makes a fire under a huge tree. None of them found anything worthwhile, neither monsters nor the belongings of the missing teams. Chev suggests that the team avoid talking about work, at least over dinner. They are already busy going to different gates. After a long day of searching for the belongings of the missing teams, the main character is a little tired, and to quench his thirst, he drinks some water. Soon the forest plunges into night. There is almost deathly silence all around. Only a light wind flying past can be heard. Chev approaches the blanket, holding a torch. He asks Elpem if he is sleeping. In response, he hears silence. Max asks the commander why ask such questions. They all know he's too fast asleep to answer. Insidious and evil smiles appear on their faces. Max understands the commander's caution, but they thought of everything. Because they put a little thing in Elpem's dinner that is powerful enough to put a giant loquat to sleep. Elpem made everything clean, and for his staff, which he so kindly brought with him, they can earn at least 10,000 mesos. Max raises the dagger over Elpem's body and says it's time to get down to business. He delivers a quick blow directly to the main character's body, but he does not hear the characteristic crunch of bones and does not see the movement of a man who has just received a deep stab wound, which worries him very much. He realizes that something is wrong, and throwing the blanket aside, he finds a small log instead of Elpem. One thing is clear, he is not in the camp. The rest of the team is no less surprised than Max. All this time they diligently watch their victim, who suddenly managed to slip away from under their noses. Chev orders to find Elpem. He is definitely somewhere nearby and could not have gone far. Suddenly, an explosion is heard nearby. Chev manages to jump to the side. A huge fire appears right below the camp and rises very quickly. The team is confused. They don't understand what happened. The commander is as surprised as the others. Well, we need to act, he says to quickly save food and other valuables before they are destroyed by fire. Chev is running around the camp in a hurry, collecting provisions, and suddenly he notices Tom, who is standing still and pointing straight. Tom turns to Chev to look there. Chev irritably asks what else is going on there. They are already in a difficult situation, and Tom does not budge like a log. But very soon the squad leader understands the reason for the surprise, no, rather horror, that Tom experiences. Because right in front of them, there is a huge monster. He understands that the fire that appeared under their camp is the least problem they face. Elpem used them as bait to lure out the monster. The real irony is that the bait slave made it so that the bait became these two-faced freaks who wanted to deal with him from the very beginning. The squad leaves the camp in a hurry, forgetting about the remaining provisions. Now their goal is to save their own lives. The monster pounces on the camp and devours it in moments, as if it were some kind of small wooden cookie. And while Chev and his team are running in horror from the monster, the main character is watching what is happening while sitting on a tree branch. The actor from Chev is, to put it mildly, terrible. He should not have shown kindness if he wanted to deceive him. This gate finished off 12 teams, and they welcomed the former decoy, not the one with more experience, with open arms. From the very beginning, everything was obvious to Elpem. He saw right through these people. He correctly guessed that this monster was the boss of the dungeon. As soon as the monster finishes with the team's camp, it immediately heads towards the fleeing people with such speed that its movements cause the tree roots to burst out of the ground. Chev analyzes the situation and comes to the conclusion that this is the worst type of monster for them. Tom asks the commander if he knows anything about this creature. Without stopping running, Chev replies that if his memory serves him right, then this is a golden slime mold. His body is made of acid, making him the worst enemy for them fighting in close combat. But this is not the last feature this creature has. Chev turns and looks towards the monster to understand what will happen now, and from his look, it becomes clear that what will happen now clearly does not please him. He runs up to his comrade and throws him aside, just as the golden slime mold spits a huge stream of acid at them. What the hell is going on? Tom is already quite shocked by such an unusual and deadly monster, but it turns out that he is also capable of this. Chev explains to the team that it is an acid arrow, an ability that shoots acid from a distance. Tom gradually begins to fall into despair. Fear slowly envelops him. He screams at the top of his lungs that it is so dishonest, the monster cannot be so strong. Chev orders them to stop panicking as the golden slime mold attacks them again. The monster continues to chase them. One of the team members asks what they will do. How can they defeat such a creature? Chev replies that first they must get out of the attack radius. The acid arrow has a reload time of 1 minute. To deal with the monster, they must get into a battle formation and destroy the core located in the center of the head. Hearing that the monster has a cooldown for ranged attacks, Max decides to go on the offensive. He runs towards the monster, not understanding what they are waiting for if the slime mold cannot attack from a distance now. Chev screams, trying to stop his comrade, but Max does not hear his commander. The thought of the possibility of killing such a strong monster completely deprives him of the instinct of self-preservation. Chev tries to explain that they must work together in order to defeat the golden slime mold, but it's too late. Max gets almost close to the monster, but suddenly he shoots an acid arrow at him, instantly splitting the guy's body in two. Chev looks at his comrade in horror, but this is not the only thing that makes him experience a new wave of fear. The fact is that, according to his calculations, reloading should have taken at least another 10 seconds, but for an unknown reason, the monster fired an acid arrow ahead of schedule. This turns out to be not the last surprise. After the golden slime mold deals with Max, he immediately takes on the rest of the team, shooting them with numerous acid projectiles. He does not leave the team the slightest chance of survival. Soon they all find themselves swallowed up by the monster, slowly dissolving inside. First, the skin disappears, and then the acid slowly eats away at their bones. Elpam comes to the conclusion that the team is now finished. Every last one is dead. As for the fact that the golden slime mold released the acidic antiquity earlier than expected, Chev was theoretically right. But the golden slime mold becomes stronger with each item it absorbs. It is quite expected that the recharge time could be reduced. The slime mold has unpredictable growth and the ability to fire acid arrows without reloading. It seems the main character is now beginning to understand why the previous teams died. The monster simply proved too strong for those who tried to conquer this dungeon. In this state, the monster will be able to hold out in these yellow gates, which are 2 levels lower than the red ones. Elpam doubts that adventurers with one circle are capable of defeating such a creature. No items can be returned from this gate. They either got lost in the forest without a trace, or were swallowed up by a monster, which is more likely. So he decides that the task is over, and he needs to look for a way out. However, an image of Ebis appears in his head, who promised to give him E rank, but only if he proves that he is worthy of it. Damn. In fact, he cannot leave these gates. He made a deal with a person from the guild, and you can't easily get rid of the status of a slave. This means he has no choice but to kill the monster. The golden slime mold is slowly moving through the forest. He has already dealt with the next group of people. He has the feeling that his peculiar work has been completed. But suddenly he feels something strange, unusual, as if someone, like a hungry and merciless predator, is looking at him from the shadows, waiting for the moment to attack. This is exactly what happens. From somewhere on the side, a powerful charge of a fiery arrow flies into the monster. Some pieces of his body scatter in different directions, leaving characteristic marks on the earth. Although the arrow hit was strong, the monster survives, immediately starting to look for the one who decided to fight him. The main character remains unnoticed for now. He aimed for the core, but the monster has impressive magic resistance. He would need at least 5 more shots to defeat him. But it's not like that's a problem. The Elps don't mind getting proof since Abbas asked for it. The monster discovers Elpam and fires acid arrows in his direction. Elpam deftly jumps from the tree and avoids the acid hitting his body. But the monster doesn't stop there and continues to fire new acid arrows. Elpam skillfully dodges the monster's attacks, moving between tall trees. But he needs to fire at least 5 more shots, and simply dodging is not enough. To put his plan into action, he uses a telekinesis ring. Using the power of the ring on a rope that is tied to a small sword, he moves so as not only to evade the monster's attacks, but also to find a suitable point for attack. Each shot must land in the same place. A simple magician can only dream of such accuracy, but Elpam is not an ordinary magician. In his past life, he was known as the greatest telekineticist. Having waited for the right moment, Elpam draws a fiery bowstring, preparing to shoot at the monster. The second shot hits the target. 4 more shots left. At the same second, the monster tries to strike back. Elpam correctly assesses his strengths and does not act recklessly. He quickly climbs up the tree trunk. This time he also manages to dodge the monster's attack. Elpam moves to the desired point and again fires a fiery arrow at the slime mold. The third shot hits the target. It remains to shoot 3 more times. The golden slime mold is already starting to get pretty angry at the main character, and getting as close as possible, he shoots many acid arrows at him, but as before, Elpam deftly dodges all attacks, and as soon as the right moment comes, he strikes again. This time, he decides to use a new tactic, and without waiting for the monster to fire, he shoots at it ahead of the curve, but the monster manages to dodge this shot. For its large size, the golden slime mold is quite agile. But when the greatest telekineticist finds himself in the hands of a telekinesis ring and a staff that shoots fiery arrows, no amount of dexterity will help the enemy. Elpam hits the monster again. The monster's body weakens and gives the main character a view of the very core that he intended to destroy all this time. To be sure to destroy the monster, he gets closer to deliver an even more powerful blow. That's it for the golden slime mold. As Elpam gets even closer, the golden slime mold transforms part of its body into a giant hand, pointed directly at Elpam. The monster brings its hand closer to crush the main character. But such a cheap trick won't work on Elpama. He uses a telekinesis ring. Using the power of the ring, he throws the sword further away and sticks it into the ground. He then pulls himself towards the sword to move out of range of the golden slime mold's strike. Immediately after landing, he prepares his staff for an attack. He fires a fiery arrow at the monster. The golden slime mold puts its hand forward to protect its face. Damn, does he really think that such protection will help him stay alive? As soon as the fiery arrow approaches the hand, Elpam uses telekinesis, thereby causing the arrow to fly under the hand. The monster has lost too much strength to dodge. Elpam hits again. The core in the center of the head begins to crack. A chain reaction starts. The monster's body begins to inflate at incredible speed, like 1,000 balloons. He is trying to make some attempts to save life, but the process is already irreversible. Eventually, the monster's body can't take it anymore and explodes. Huge streams of acid fly in different directions. Soon they fall to the ground and begin to pursue the hero, turning into an acidic stream. Elpam understands that the acid will soon reach him. He needs to come up with something. He uses telekinesis and throws his sword forward. Once the rope tied to the sword reaches the tree, the protagonist wraps the rope around a thick branch. Then he jumps up and, pulling himself up, manages to jump onto a tree. The monster has been destroyed, but its body has lost its shape, and now there is still danger from the acid below. Gradually, the acid left behind by the golden slime mold stops moving. A few minutes pass, and the acid evaporates. Elpam jumps to the ground because it is now safe to walk on. He slowly makes his way to the place where the monster recently exploded. Soon he finds what he is looking for. Nearby lies a bright luminous ball. This is the very core that remained after the explosion. Using telekinesis, Elpam makes a round object fly to him. He examines the golden slime mold core with interest. Suddenly, a bright light begins to break through from the core. Soon the glow becomes brighter, and a magical aura appears around the object. After a couple of moments, the core disappears. The monster is over. Now the main character can only find a way out. After some time, he returns to the city. The first thing he does is visit Abby's to let him know that he is back from his mission. The man smokes a cigar for a few seconds and silently looks at the guy. "Great, so you're not only good at talking," says Abbas. However, Abbas immediately notices that he came to him alone, and what's more, without the items that he undertook to return. Elpam explains that the team he was assigned to consisted of absolute beginners. They tried to kill him to take his item. As for why they didn't return, the main character says that the team probably met the boss of the dungeon, and they died running away from him. Abby's asks if he saw this monster. Elpam answers in the affirmative. It was a golden slime mold. Hearing this, the man is very surprised, saying that if this is so, Then it turns out that all the items left over from past adventurers were irretrievably lost. But this is very bad, because Abby's realizes that the guild has lost all the items that it lent to the adventurers. Not only is this a huge loss, but there is no one to force to pay the debt, because everyone is dead. And the fact that the guy came back is another problem. Several universal rules apply to all gates. Firstly, each gate has its own limit on the number of people who can enter it. It is marked on the tree trunk in front of the entrance. When the limit is reached, the gate is deactivated until everyone who enters dies. Secondly, there is a restriction on which adventurers can enter a gate of a certain color. Gate difficulty ranges from red to purple. If the adventurer's rank exceeds the allowed level, he will not be able to enter the gate. Thirdly, the adventurer is given only one chance to clear the gate, and this is the main difficulty associated with capturing it. As soon as someone leaves the gate alive, it immediately disappears, and no one else can enter there. Another opportunity is given only if all team members died at the gate. If everything is simplified as much as possible, then the gates and rewards disappeared, and all because the main character returned from there alive. Abby's knows that the golden slime mold is too powerful a monster for adventurers with one circle. But whatever the reason, he failed the task. Elpam tells the man not to rush to a conclusion, because he hasn't finished speaking yet. Abbas understood everything correctly. He did not take a single item with him from the dungeon, but this does not mean that he returned with absolutely nothing. Elpam slowly unties his shoelaces to remove the leather bandage on his arm. As soon as the main character finishes doing this, Abbas looks at him with a shocked look, saying, "This cannot be." Elpam shows his wrist, which shows 2 shining circles, saying that he has absorbed the golden slime mold. Shocked, Abbas asks if he really absorbed the mana stone that fell from the monster. Elpam replies that it is so, and this perfectly shows what he is capable of. Now he wants to go back to what they were talking about earlier, which is to have Abbas register him as an E-rank adventurer. Abbas says that he will give him D rank, to which Elpam asks in bewilderment, "What does this mean?" Abbas, almost beaming with happiness, says that he is ready to give him a rank higher than he originally asked, but if he agrees to work exclusively for him, he will become the owner of rank C. Elpam takes the pen and starts signing the contract. C rank is prohibitively high for adventurers without a third circle. The rank of adventurers is strongly tied to the number of circles. In this world, the corresponding number of circles of power varies greatly. Novice adventurers come first, then junior adventurers, and then veteran adventurers with A and B ranks. However, Abbas sees that this guy is clearly an exception to the usual rules. Not everyone can get a circle by consuming a mana stone. In addition, he has an instinct for self-preservation, which significantly exceeds those that Abbas noticed in fellow adventurers. Elpam earned his second round in the blink of an eye right after the first. His development speed is unheard of. Therefore, the enterprising Abbas understands perfectly well that this guy needs to be hired. Elpam thinks to himself that everything is going better than he expected. From Abbas's reaction, the main character understands that he probably desperately needs him. To be honest, he will need it in the near future. Very soon, the first conquest of the Red Gate for 100 people will take place. If his memory serves him right, then around this time, there will be a huge event in which all the trade and adventure guilds in Lith will be interested. Kapoor will also probably turn his attention to this event. This is not bad at all, because he is also in a hurry, and it would not hurt him to speed up the execution of his plan a little. Having finished signing the contract, he puts the pen aside. He tells Abbas that he wants to ask a favor, to which the man calmly replies that he is listening to him. Elpam extends his hand forward and asks to lend him money. The man looks at the guy without saying a word. Damn, what an impudent little guy. Is he seriously asking for money like that? Thinks Abbas, amazed at the sudden request from Elpam. Some argue that the appearance of the gate gave birth to an era of adventure, but in reality, they are a trap set by a dark magician. Many adventurers died in the gates, slowly but surely robbing the world of Maple of its potential. And then, the day of the apocalypse came. A huge number of monsters, as if waiting for this moment, emerged from the gate, and the people were defeated. The described event will occur exactly 3 years later. The tragic fate of Maple's world, which is destined to collide with her, is just around the corner. But now things are a little different. The main character has a unique chance to change the course of history, because he knows what will happen in the future. He has a long way to go, but the money that Abbas lent him should be enough to start implementing his plans. The newly found 100-person gate is red. This means that only those who have 2 circles or less can enter there. The merchant guild usually hires adventurers with high ranks. The only reason the guild is investing in him is because they are targeting this gate. Elpham finally has money, but his supply is not unlimited, so he needs to manage it wisely. Don't spend it all at once without carefully considering the decision. Really useful items are too expensive, and he can't afford them now. After this, the question arises, what is the best thing to spend the borrowed money on? He stops near the arch and looks at the sign above his head. The sign says this is the local labor market. He stands still for a few seconds, lost in thought. A guy approaches the main character and greets him. Paying attention to the cape, he realizes that Elpham looks like an adventurer, so he immediately offers to accompany him to the place he wishes. Maybe he's looking for a decoy slave, or maybe he is looking for a partner who will fight alongside him. Elpham replies that he is looking for a certain person and asks to take him to where he is. The guy is a little surprised by this request, but asks what kind of person the young master wants to see. Soon they reach an underground room lit by 2 rows of torches. The guy says that there is a punitive prison here. The most problematic people are sent here for correctional purposes. The one the young master is looking for is just one of those. They walk along the corridor for some time and then stop. The guy points to the metal grate and says that here is the person he was looking for. In a prison cell, there is a man bound with iron chains. As soon as the guy looks at him, he immediately feels uneasy. He turns to Elpham and asks if he is sure that this is the man he wanted to see, because he does not have the best reputation. Elpham calmly replies that he knows about it. This was the man he was looking for. In his eyes, one can see the hatred, malice, and contempt that he feels for those who are on the other side of the iron barrier. But why did the main character go specifically to him? Well, now we'll find out. The death of one man was hastened by the destruction of Maple's world in his previous life. Auron, the heroine who wielded the axe, was killed. The culprit turned out to be none other than her only student, a hero killer named Debo. This incident marked the beginning of the end. Were you looking for me? Debo asks the main character, to which he responds with silence. He is in a clearly unfriendly mood towards him. They have never met before, so Debo tells Elpham to get out of here. The guy apologizes to Elpham for such a rude statement on the part of the prisoner, saying that he still needs to be taught manners. Now he may seem like a simple rude man, but Elpham knows much more about him. He will gain fame in a few years, but for now, he is in slavery. But even now, he dares to defy the adventurer who could become his master. The term arrogant does not fully reflect his character. The guy explains this ill-mannered behavior by saying that Debo is a real savage. However, Elpham does not care about this. After all, he was the most powerful person after himself when the apocalypse happened. People have often compared them as they have so many similarities, from when they awakened their powers to how strong they became. Elpham asks Debo what price he values himself at. Debo thinks that Elpham is from a rich family, since he showed up here. He asks if Elpham is sure that he can afford such large expenses. Debo calls the price 1 million mesos. His arrogant smile shows that he is absolutely sure that the main character does not have that much money. They really needed money in difficult times. Debo's younger sister suffers from black blood, and considerable resources are needed to cure her. Debo again says that if Elpham doesn't have the required amount, then it's time for him to get lost. Elpham doesn't answer, and silently reaches into his pocket to take out the money. Debo's expression instantly changes. His arrogant gaze disappears, replaced by shock. Without saying a word, the main character takes out 1 million mesos. Debo asks himself, does this man have real money? The guy behind is also no less shocked and asks Elpham if he is sure of his decision. Debo is very nervous from surprise. Elpham says that Debo Rano is delighted because he is not finished yet. Before he buys Debo, he demands a 1-year contract with simple terms. Profits are split 7-3. All items obtained from the gate will be given to him, and he will decide what to do with them. The guy never ceases to be surprised and asks himself, is the young master really trying to hire Debo as a member of the team and not as a slave? Elpham takes out the contract and, handing it to Debo, asks him to carefully read the terms. Debo does not take, but snatches the contract from the hands of the protagonist, asking only one thing. Elpham should not take back his words. He puts his finger under the jaw and, pressing on it with his teeth, makes a small wound from which blood slowly oozes. He places his bloody finger on the contract, thereby agreeing to its terms. Elpham immediately noticed that he didn't even think about it. He seemed to really want to take care of his little sister and was ready to do anything to help her. Well, he wisely used the money that the guild lent him, Since the contract has now been signed, it's time to get down to business. Elpam says that they will now go to the gate. Debo enthusiastically replies that he's been waiting for him to say that. Elpam tells Debo that he has to prove his worth. He's still paid decent money for it. Debo, without doubting himself for a second, proudly replies that he is the most dexterous of those he has met. The story continues in the forest area. Elpam silently walks towards the gate. Debo tries to somehow start a dialogue with him, but Elpam does not pay attention, silently continuing to walk forward. Debo thanks the main character for the new weapon, but with a long sword he feels more confident. Maybe he should master the weapon in which he has more experience. Elpam replies that while he is working with him, he will only use an axe. If he is against it, he can terminate the contract at any time. They soon reach the red gate with 1 mark and a limit of 8 people. These are exactly the ones that are useful for obtaining resources. Debo looks around and asks his boss what about the other team members. Elpam probably has enough money to hire them. He also asks if there will be a healer with them. Such a team member is very important, and in a difficult situation can save a life. Debo then notices Elpam's strange look and asks why he is looking at me like that, and then a terrifying thought comes to him, which makes his body fall into a stupor. But the main character calms him down, saying that they have enough people on the team to clear these gates. Debo breathes a sigh of relief, saying that the boss scared him pretty much. Elpam points his finger at Debo, saying that they are the only 2 team members who will clear the gate. There is an alarming pause. Debo does not immediately understand what Elpam just said. However, as soon as it dawns on him that there will be no one else besides the 2 of them, he falls into horror, asking Elpam, "Is this a joke?" Elpam does not give an answer to the question, and with a kick in the back makes the guy fly into the gate. The horror still lingers in his mind as he walks through the gate. He never stops screaming. A couple of moments later, they pass through the gate, ending up in a desert area. Debo lands on the ground and doesn't move for several seconds due to the shock he just experienced. He turns to Elpam and indignantly asks, has he lost his mind? What can the 2 of them do in a gate designed for 8? Where is his serious approach to business? First, he forced him to take a weapon that he was not used to, and then he pushed him into the gate, knowing that there were only 2 of them. Does he think he's too cool? Debo wants to express even more dissatisfaction to the main character, but he falls silent, hearing footsteps approaching from the side. He turns around and sees a huge number of monsters that look like wooden stumps. The thought arises in his head that his scream attracted these creatures. They are known for their resistance to bladed weapons. There are a whole horde of them here, so how can they deal with them? Elpam confidently steps forward and tells the guy to step aside. Debo tries to stop Elpam, thinking that he has gone crazy, but Elpam acts prudently. Using his staff, he fires a fiery arrow at the creatures, destroying several wooden monsters at a time. Debo is surprised when he sees the magic that the main character uses. Releasing several more fiery arrows, Elpam again deals with the monsters. In some, it makes a huge hole, and in others, it destroys into small pieces. Deprived of the instinct of self-preservation, the monsters mindlessly continue to try to attack Elpam, but all their attempts are in vain. Less than a minute passes, and Elpam deals with all the wooden creatures. He says it's sad that Debo started screaming as soon as he entered the gate. He asks not to repeat this mistake again, because who knows, maybe next time it won't be so easy for them to fight back. Debo doesn't answer. He's just damn amazed at how skillfully Elpam dealt with the crowd of monsters. He asks himself, who the hell is this man? The narrative of the story is transferred to a huge building. A girl enters the room, and crouching on one knee, she reports that the trade guild has taken the bait. They are thinking over a schedule for implementation, and their people are among the guild. A man stands near the window holding a glass of aromatic wine in his hand. She asks the man if he will allow her to proceed with the plan. The man turns to the girl, answering that he gives permission. The girl bows, expressing her devotion. Then she disappears from the room, dissolving into space. The man raises his glass and says, "Thy will be done. We will free the world of Maple." The story then immediately returns to our heroes. Debo collects all 27 mana stones from the corpses of small monsters, which he reports to the main character. Okay, so they're done here. It's time to move on. For some time they walk silently along the desert. Debo thought that Elpam was just crazy, but after seeing him in battle, he realized that this guy is serious when it comes to completing tasks. Besides, he had never seen anyone use fire arrows like that, magically changing their trajectory. Could this really be telekinesis? In any case, he is glad that he was next to a talented person, because he can earn a lot of money. and since they are dividing all the spoils 7-3, he will be able to earn money from treating his sister and his livelihood. Elpam then says that he found them. Nearby there is another group of stumps, which are still in a dormant state. Debo carefully looks around the corner and counts 9 small monsters. Elpam says this is perfect. A little perplexed, Debo turns to the main character and asks what he means by this. Elpam doesn't say a word, but Debo immediately understands from the look in his eyes what he needs to do. He also throws a small stone to attract the attention of one of the tree stumps. The monster looks in the direction where the stone falls, completely oblivious to the fact that death is already looming over his head. Taking advantage of the distraction, Debo sneaks up from the other side and delivers a crushing blow to the monster. The remaining monsters wake up and see in front of them a man armed with an axe. He dealt with one monster, but what to do with the rest? Should he really kill them himself? This infuriates him because he has never picked up an axe before, and this weapon is unusual for him. Even 10 lives are not enough for him to destroy these little wooden monsters. He again begins to consider Elpam sick in the head, since he sent him alone to deal with these creatures. Debo once told Elpam that he only fought with a sword, and Elpam notices this from the guy's clumsy movements. He really doesn't act too confident, but he will soon realize that the axe will reveal his full potential. There is not a single reason to doubt this. After all, he was the only one whom Erin, the heroine who wields an axe perfectly, chose as a student. One of the monsters puts its wooden legs forward in a position to grab Debo, but Debo quickly deals with this monster, and to his surprise, not only with one, but also with several at a time. Debo begins to analyze the fight and realizes that the axe has a large radius and is quite powerful. It is much more convenient than a sword. After he relaxed a little, it became easier for him. But what if he hits even more calmly? New monsters are just approaching him, and he decides to test his assumption in practice. He puts aggression aside. It's as if he becomes one whole with the axe, completely trusting it as an extension of his hand, thanks to which he deals with several monsters in a matter of seconds, with light, graceful, but powerful movements. Elpam sees how the guy quickly begins to adapt to the new weapon. He has not yet awakened the circle, but is already showing good results. Debo seems to be dealing with the little monsters, and for the first seconds it seems to him that his work is finished. But suddenly, he feels the ground under his feet begin to shake. Is this really an earthquake? Debo thinks, looking at the stone formation. Cracks suddenly begin to appear on the rock formation, and some pieces fall off. Some kind of chute emerges from there, easily piercing a huge layer of stone. Debo tries to figure out what he's getting out. Soon another appendage emerges from the stone and hits the guy. Debo is sent flying, but manages to land on his feet. He raises his head, and surprise freezes on his face. Right before his eyes, a giant stump appears heading towards him. Debo is so surprised that he loses concentration, and it would cost him his life if not for the main character, who manages to save him almost at the last moment. Once they are at a safe distance, he throws the guy aside. Although the monster looks huge and intimidating, Elpam does not see this as a problem. Thanks to this size, the monster becomes a walking target that is easy to hit. Debo has already seen fire magic in battle, and knows how dangerous it is for wooden monsters, so he does not doubt for a second that a fire arrow will instantly kill a giant monster. The guy's hopes are crushed at the same moment when the monster blocks the blow of one of the branches on his head. The monster's reaction turns out to be faster than Elpam initially thought. But what will he say to this? Elpam runs to the side and prepares to shoot another fiery arrow. He immediately uses telekinesis, starting to spin the arrow around the monster. The arrow approaches the back of a huge stump. Elpam hopes that the monster will not be able to repel the attack from the blind spot, but this assumption turns out to be false. Without even turning around, the monster flawlessly repels the second attack. It is as if he senses danger that he cannot see with his eyes. Elpam was not surprised that the monster blocked the first blow, but from his shocked look, one can understand that he did not expect such dexterity from the creature. Debo screams in horror that fire magic does not work on this monster. He sees no other choice but to run. Elpam understands the guy's fear, but he tries with all his might to maintain a cool head. After analyzing the last shots, he realizes that everything is a little different. If a wooden stump had immunity to fire, it would not defend itself so much, which means fire is its weakness. But the problem lies in its branches, which move at incredible speeds and have the ability to stretch. Debo and Elpam barely manage to dodge another blow from the monster, which could easily crush them. But he has more than one branch on his head, right? This means that he is now preparing a new attack to deal with the adventurers. Debo realizes that they cannot avoid this blow. Elpam also understands this, and in order not to die, uses the ring. Using force, he attracts a huge stone towards himself. Fortunately, he manages to block the blow of the huge monster. They then descend on this rock, Debo praising his boss for his resourcefulness. He had already begun to say goodbye to life, but the main character managed to save them both. Little monsters immediately run up to them. Elpam says that he is taking on the main monster, and let Debo deal with this little thing. Debo wants to say something to Elpam, but as soon as he turns around, he immediately sees that Elpam has already managed to move away from him at a decent distance. Approaching a huge tree stump, the main character prepares his staff for an attack. Once again, he fires a fiery arrow at the monster. This time, Debo doesn't believe in Elpam's victory, because you can't defeat the monster if you don't have a plan. There's only one thing left to do. Run. What Debo expected happens. The monster easily reflects the fire arrow. Now he is finally losing hope that they will be able to deal with this monster. The monster is also sure that stupid people cannot defeat him. They are trying losing tactics for the umpteenth time. Soon he will simply find them and crush them like little insects. However, to his surprise, the monster notices that a fiery arrow hits him, and he is surprised because he was unable to see it. Debo is no less surprised, because how can this be? Elpam tried to hit him point blank more than once, and all attempts were in vain. But what is happening this time? It turns out that before striking, the main character manages to come up with a plan. The monster's branches are moving faster than he thought. Therefore, even with the help of telekinesis, it is impossible to bypass them and get between them. But he has a second circle, so he can call upon magic twice, reducing the time between shots to mere moments. Elpam again uses a distracting maneuver and hits the monster. Such actions instill confidence in Debo, because he sees with his own eyes how Elpam finds a way out of a seemingly hopeless situation. He fired one fire arrow after another. No matter how fast the monster was, he would not be able to block two attacks at once. He finds it hard to believe that this tree stump is completely unable to defend itself against Elpam's attacks. One thing is clear. Elpam is much stronger than Debo previously thought. Damn, this is already bad, comes the thought in Debo's head. While Elpam was dealing with the huge stump, other smaller stumps managed to escape from Debo, heading straight towards Elpam. Debo yells at the main character to turn around. He doesn't even need to turn around. Using a fire arrow and telekinesis, he quickly deals with annoying creatures. Elpam turns to Debo and asks, "Can he deal with these little guys? Why the hell did he agree to sign the contract if he can't even do such basic work?" While Elpam is turned towards his partner, the monster spots an ideal opportunity for himself. Just for a moment, the main character is distracted, and this moment is enough for the monster to deliver a sudden blow. Elpam quickly realizes his mistake. If he is only distracted for a second, the monster immediately attacks. This is exactly what happens. Elpam is in a hurry trying to run away from a huge stump, the branch of which is already heading straight towards him. The branch is coming very close to Elpam, who can no longer get out of the affected area. Suddenly Debo grabs him by the shoulder. He throws Elpam aside and chops off a branch of a huge stump. He then lands on the ground. He turns to Elpam and demands that he take back his words, because he just saved his life. For the first time ever, a smile appears on his face. Elpam agrees that he was a little wrong. Now he sees that Debo is useful. Now they have only one thing left to do, to finish off the huge stump and all the other little monsters in order to finally complete the job. Elpam orders Debo to go forward, straight towards the monster. And while the guy is approaching a huge stump, he will support him with fire from the rear. The monster does not have time to keep track of several arrows at once, and one of them cuts off his branch. He begins to get angry that people dared to chop off several branches for him. He notices the fire arrow and tries to deflect it. Meanwhile, Debo does not stop running towards the monster. Together they overcome obstacles in the form of branches on their way. Debo swings his axe, and Elpam provides him with fire support. This time again, the monster fails to repel all the blows of the protagonist. But suddenly Elpam notices something unusual. The monster changes tactics and decides to hit Debo from both sides. Elpam shouts that he will take over the right branch, to which Debo replies that then he will take over the left branch. The coordinated work of long-range and melee combat makes itself felt. The guys instantly repulse the monster's new attack. Debo then lands on the body of a huge tree stump. He runs around the body so that the monster cannot grab him. Approaching the head, he cuts off several more branches with incredible speed. However, at this moment he is unable to defend himself, which is what the huge stump takes advantage of, striking him in the back. The blow turns out to be strong. The guy's eyes turn white, and blood flies out of his mouth. The monster prepares to close its wooden jaw to tear Debo into small pieces, but Elpam will never allow this to happen. Using telekinesis, he pulls out a small stone platform from the ground, with which he saves Debo from certain death. The monster immediately breaks this platform, but the guy already comes to his senses. Seeing the monster's rage, Elpam realizes that it is becoming increasingly difficult to predict its next movements. Elpam lifts several more large stones into the air. Debo lands on one of these rocks. However, he immediately notices a branch behind him. Debo would undoubtedly have died if Elpam had not provided him with platforms on which he quickly escaped from the affected area. After making sure that Debo has moved to a safe distance, Elpam launches new fire arrows at the monster. Now the monster is distracted by the main character, who is standing somewhere in the distance, and completely forgets about Debo. Debo gets close to the monster and raises his axe to deliver a powerful blow. It hits the eye of a huge monster. A huge stump writhes in pain, and scarlet blood flows from its eye. For a moment, Debo lets go of the axe, but then he immediately returns the axe to his hands and jumps away from the monster towards the stones. He has already deprived the monster of one eye, but this is not the end. Debo jumps away from the rocks, aiming straight for the eye. To help his partner, the main character uses telekinesis. Debo puts the axe under the control of Elpam, and he already does everything so that the axe hits the eye. Then, with a deft movement of his hand, he swings the axe back. The axe flies out of the monster's body, leaving new wounds on it. The axe then returns to the hands of its owner. Debo yells at the monster to open its mouth. It's time for dessert. He begins to swing his axe in different directions, causing a bloody rampage. You can hear the monster screaming heart-rendingly in monstrous pain, but Debo doesn't care at all. He enjoys causing pain to the monster. A huge stump unwinds and throws the guy to the side. Debo lands on his feet and jumps back several times. The monster opens its mouth and prepares to eat Debo alive. At the same time, Debo notices several fire arrows. The monster makes a mistake that becomes fatal for him. Not only did he not try to protect himself with branches, but he also kindly opened his mouth, giving Elpam a chance to shoot at the weak spot. As expected, the monster's core cannot stand it and begins to collapse. He is immediately engulfed in fire. He randomly moves in different directions, trying to put out the flames, but all his attempts are in vain. Debo never stops watching the monster die in terrible agony. The main character approaches him and says that he did a great job. Finally, they figured out the main problem. Debo tells Elpam that he did well too. For some time they simply watch as the huge wooden creature burns alive. After this, the story continues deep into the night in the city. A girl sits alone at the table, looking at a plate of food. She says that she needs to eat quickly and go to bed. She puts her hands together and closes her eyes and prays, giving thanks for the food she can see on the table. She is distracted from her prayer by a sudden knock on the door in the middle of the night. The girl opens the door to find out who decided to visit her at such a late hour, and as soon as she sees who knocked on her door a few seconds ago, she cannot believe her eyes. Standing in front of her is her brother Debo, covered in scars and slightly smeared with blood. Finally, he returned to her. Tears slowly begin to flow from her eyes, but she tries to keep a serious face. She throws herself at her brother with a tight hug, making it clear that she is glad to have him back. After this, the story moves to a lonely house in the middle of a dense forest. While Debo is talking with his sister, Elpam heads to this house. He goes inside, walks a few steps forward and tilts his head down. Behind him on the table is a photograph of him as a child, where he looks very young. In addition to himself, the photograph shows a person whose face is hidden from us. Most likely, he is the main character's father. It turns out that all this time, Elpam has been looking at that man from the photograph. He looks emaciated and his body doesn't move, and it's unclear whether he's alive or long dead. Elpam looks at this man with an absolutely cold gaze, devoid of any emotion. He leaves the house and begins to prepare the staff. Taking a few more steps forward, he shoots a fire arrow at the house. The wooden house quickly becomes consumed by flames. It is still unclear who this person is, and for what purpose Elpam burned the house. But perhaps in the future, this will become clear to us. The story continues in Abbas's office. He looks at a lot of papers and says that this is a problem. Soon it will be necessary to send people into the 100-person gate. But who to choose? Larkana is responsible for this campaign, but if he himself fails, it will be very bad. This campaign is very important and will attract the attention of all the guilds in the top 10. A 100-person gate should have items of epic rank or higher, and may even have legendary tier items. But they simply won't get such rewards. It will be difficult. One of the obstacles is Natasha's three sisters from Goldrich's guild. They are so strong that it is difficult to believe their rank of the second circle of power. Compared to them, the second circle adventurers from Gapur are even embarrassed to be called adventurers. But even without them, the adventurers from the 10 guilds pose a threat. After all, their guild is the weakest of the 10 largest. He hates to admit it, but it seems that one of the outstanding candidates who has at least some chance of success is Elpam, who has recently shown what he is capable of with his actions. The door to his office opens. He displeasedly asks who dared to enter him without knocking. As soon as he sees who decided to come to him, his menacing and dissatisfied look immediately disappears. None other than Larkana himself comes to see him. It is this person who will be responsible for the upcoming trip to the gate for 100 people. Larkana sits down on a chair and asks what about the composition of the group. Abbas timidly replies that he has not yet made a final list, which Larkin is slightly surprised by, because Abbas often does not take time with this. In addition, he asks how their friend is doing, who recently returned completely alone from the dungeon. Abbas replies that he still has reasons to worry. The Chev group was completely destroyed, and since there were no witnesses there, it is not possible to establish what exactly happened there. Abbas doesn't deny the fact that Elpam is a talented guy, but that's not the problem. It becomes clear to Larkana that Abbas still doubts the guy, so he suggests that Abbas test Elpam again to find out whether he is crazy or not. In addition, he orders the gathering of all candidates. Larkana understands Abbas's concern. Last time the situation really turned out to be confusing. But now there will be a lot of witnesses, and if Elpam really is not completely normal, it will now become clear to them. By order of Abbas, the main character and his partner arrive at the collection point. Debo is surprised that there are so many people here, although in theory this is how it usually should be. They approach Elpam and ask if they are the same fifth team. The guy with the red headband and his team greet our heroes with dissatisfied looks, and all because they used to be slaves. Elpam looks around to understand how the other teams are disposed towards them. They are not welcome here. The more experienced the team, the more their confidence grows that the slaves are just a nuisance. Most here have 1 or 2 circles of power. They are significantly different from Chev's team. With such abilities, they have no need for bait to attract monsters. Soon, Abbas comes out to the crowd and orders everyone to get into line. He gets straight to the point, saying that they will now conduct a test. Those who adequately demonstrate their abilities will receive a special chance. The guy asks what chance we are talking about. Abbas replies that those who pass the test will have a chance to enter the 100-person gate. The guy and his team are surprised by this statement. Abbas says this will be an opportunity for everyone present. While many cannot believe the veracity of his words, Elpam calmly listens to him because he understands where everything is going. After making sure everyone is ready, Abbas orders everyone to enter the gate. Elpam and Daibo enter the gate and begin moving into the dungeon. They once again find themselves in the forest. The guy with the headband asks the magician behind him if he understands correctly that it's enough to just kill the boss with joint efforts. After that, he suggests that they split into teams and meet when they receive the signal. Everyone chose their teams, with the exception of the main character and his partner. Just as they came together, they stayed together. No one expresses a desire to take 2 former slaves into their team. Then the teams go in different directions. Dolan says they don't have much time, so they need to make good use of it. Suddenly, Dolan senses the presence of a living creature nearby. Peering into the green thickets, he notices a small monster. Surprisingly, only one. Damn, we're just wasting our time. With these words, Dolan fires an energy discharge at the monster. The destruction of such small creatures is mortal boredom for him. He tells the team to take the magic stone and move on. However, not all so simple. It turns out that the energy discharge neither killed the monster nor even scratched it. Dolan comes to the conclusion that magical attacks do not work on this monster. Realizing this, one of the team members comes forward with a kunai to deal with the monster in a different way. Dolan notices leaves flying towards them at high speed, as if something is creating a flow of wind in their direction. A few seconds later, he realizes what was creating the wind current and shouts to the team to be careful. The team is surrounded by a crowd of small monsters. They confront them and ultimately win. Even though these were ordinary mobs, victory was not easy for them. Dolan looks around to make sure there are no living monsters left. The girl says that the monsters turned out to be much stronger than they expected. What should they do now? There are too many monsters here for them. If this continues, their strength will quickly dry up. The risk is of course high, but despite this he offers to break the alliance and kill the boss ourselves. That's what most of the teams will think, says the main character. Debo agrees with him, but doesn't Elpam want to help him deal with these little monsters? Otherwise all he does is talk. Elpam calmly replies that there were only 3 monsters here, and Debo managed to deal with them. Be that as it may, they don't have much time, so they need to act. Debo decides to start hunting the boss, and Elpam decides to destroy all the mobs. Elpam says that the rest will take care of the boss, and they will engage in mass destruction of mobs. Elpam explains his decision by saying that now it is not profitable for them to compete with other teams. It is difficult to predict what they will do, so now it is more profitable for them to hunt small monsters. Despite his displeasure, Debo realizes that Elpam is right. In addition, there is danger from this gate. They need to be very careful. We then move to Dolan's team. They walk through the forest, trying to listen to every sound. The girl points to the side and asks Dolan to look there. He turns his head and sees an escape gate. He didn't want to look for them now, but if so, they would leave a mark on the road so they would know where the exit was. One of the team members starts laughing hysterically. Dolan asks Abant to be quiet, but he doesn't stop. The laughter intensifies, becoming crazier every moment. An angry Dolan grabs him by the shoulder, already rudely telling him to shut up. Otherwise, he will attract monsters. He turns Abant to face him and sees a completely different person who seems to have been consumed by madness. Then a purple gas appears, after which the others begin to laugh madly. Dolan covers his mouth and nose with his hand, realizing that this is nothing more than poison. He decides to go out alone. It is at this moment that a giant monster with a mushroom head appears behind him. The creature releases poisonous gas from numerous holes on its body. Dolan turns around, a look of animal horror on his face. A huge monster, with a crazy smile and a mouth with sharp teeth in several rows, stands just a few steps away from him. Soon the poisonous gas poisons him too. Common sense finally leaves his consciousness. He begins to laugh hysterically, completely succumbing to the influence of the poison. The narrative of the story then returns to our heroes. Looking at Elpam, Debo asks in his mind, is he even going to fight? All he does is give out instructions. Then he looks up. He and Elpam notice a bright flash in the sky, which is a signal of a general gathering. Soon they arrive at a common meeting point. Debo is even a little surprised that they notified everyone when they found the main monster. Elpam examines the crowd, and again these dissatisfied glances, as at their first meeting. Elpam doesn't pay attention to this, but what he does notice is that there is no one team. After making sure that everyone has gathered, the guy prepares to give an explanation why he called everyone here. The girl interrupts him, pointing out that Dolan's team is still not there. The guy replies that there is no point in waiting for them, and the reason why the team shouldn't wait is because they discovered the boss. This creature, by the way, dealt with Dolan's team, devouring them like dessert. The boss of this place is a crazy poisonous mushroom. Judging by the girl's frightened reaction, it is clear that the monster has already managed to scare her without even meeting her. She understands perfectly well that their team does not have enough strength for such a fight. The guy also realizes the seriousness of the situation. With such a serious enemy, they have no chance to clear the gate. The girl says that we need to look for a way out, that's all. Hearing all these conversations, Debo asks the main character, is this mushroom really that dangerous? Elpam is immersed in his thoughts, because he also understands that at the current level, meeting this monster is the most dangerous for them. Due to the poison in the spores that the monster releases around itself, melee combat is pointless. Therefore, it is impossible to surround him. He can only be killed in ranged combat. But given the unimaginable speed of the mushroom and its durability, they cannot attack without a plan. Otherwise, they will simply go to certain death. The guy has another not very pleasant news. This mushroom stands right in front of the exit gate, and you can only get to it through it. Having not yet had time to realize the complexity of the current situation, Debo proudly declares that this mushroom is not a problem for them. Just one fiery arrow from Elpam, and only ashes will remain from the mushroom. Elpam asks the guy to shut up and not throw words into the wind. One thing is clear. Without a good strategy, they will all quickly die. Fire arrow won't even be able to scratch this monster. Even ordinary monsters here have tough skin, so don't expect that the arrow will somehow harm the boss. The guy with the bandage thinks the main character's word is complete nonsense. A team member tries to reason with him, explaining that now is not the time to show his pride. They need a solution, because their lives are at stake. Elpam interrupts their conversation, saying that everyone must pay him 50,000 mesos. The guy is perplexed by such a strange statement. There are 30 people gathered here, so in the end, they will have to pay 1.5 million. Then they will be ready to act as bait to distract the main monster. There is an awkward pause. Debo clutches his head, asking himself, Has the boss gone completely crazy? The guy tells the main character not to interfere in their affairs. It seems that his slave mentality has not yet completely faded, since he is ready to become bait. Well, let him not think that everything will be the way he wants. In this situation, bait will not help. If the useless bait dies immediately, then it will be all over for them. At a high-level gate, slaves are only a hindrance, and he knows this from experience. And anyway, who is Elpam to propose such ideas? As far as he knows, Debo hasn't even woken up yet. What can a person with a second circle and a slave actually do? Debo is ready to attack the guy for such statements. Elpam does not give in to anger and puts the guy in his place with just 2 questions. And what do you propose? Do you have a better option? From such a surprise, the guy doesn't even know what to say, which means he has no other ideas. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gathered everyone here. And one more thing, as the guy said earlier, there is actually one person on their team with a second circle, but there is also a person with the first circle. Debo looks at his wrist, and seeing a shining circle on it, he is incredibly surprised. Moreover, among all those present, only a few have 2 circles. The guy understands that he has no arguments against the words of the protagonist. Then the girl enters into dialogue with Elpam. She agrees to pay if Elpam becomes bait. Although now she does not even have 100,000 mesos to pay for the work of each of them, Elpam says that the girl can pay when they leave here. If they cannot escape, they will simply sacrifice themselves. But he has one condition. Elpam demands that everyone agree to his demands. Only then will they become bait to distract the monster. He outlined the essence of his plan to them. All they have to do is make a decision. Why does history move to the exit gate? The mad mushroom sits right next to the gate and slowly devours the remaining bodies of Dolan's team. It seems to him that he will enjoy his meal for a long time, eating human meat, but suddenly he feels someone approaching, and turning his head, he notices a fiery arrow appearing in front of his face. He does not have time to jump away. The main character hits the target. Due to the sudden attack, the monster sprays poisonous gas around to hide its location. Due to the thick poisonous smoke, the monster does not see them yet. Thanks to the bandages on their faces, the guys know that they will not be affected by the poison. Elpam orders Debo to flee as soon as the monster discovers them. They soon notice a pair of glowing red eyes. The monster runs towards them at incredible speed. Elpam says it's time to run. They run as fast as they can. Debo is even surprised at how fast the monster is. It's like a maddened animal that sees its prey running away. All this time, the others stood behind the trees. The girl carefully looks out, and seeing that the monster is moving away, she shouts to the others to run towards the gate. They must activate it until the bait is killed. The guy runs up to the gate and clicks on the totem. A small electrical discharge appears. The gate activation process has begun. The gate opens. The girl shouts to the others to run faster while there is a chance. Meanwhile, the monster does not stop pursuing the main character and his partner. Although Debo can run fast, it is difficult even for him to run away from such a fast monster. Moreover, on their way they meet small monsters who also don't mind tasting human meat. Damn, did these little monsters think he would be so easy to deal with? Realizing the danger behind him, Debo sees in these monsters only pathetic insects that he will now happily crush. Using a slashing blast, he instantly destroys a crowd of small mushrooms that attack him. However, it is at this moment that the crazy mushroom gets close to him. Debo doesn't even need to turn around to realize that behind him is the embodiment of death. Elpam manages to throw the crazy mushroom aside with a shot of a fiery arrow in his face. For several moments, the monster does not move and growls angrily. Elpam decides to take advantage of this moment and strike the monster again. However, this time the mushroom dodges the shot. Then the main character uses telekinesis, forcing the fiery arrow to change its trajectory. He expects to hit the monster from behind. This attempt fails. Then he tries to hit the monster from the other side, but this time the monster manages to dodge. Wherever Elpam shoots, the monster dodges every time. He is already almost close to Debo and Elpam. Just at this moment, Elpam notices a cliff ahead. Without hesitation for a second, they jump down. The monster tries to grab Debo with its clawed paw, but he fails to do so. The guys do not intend to leave the monster so easily without leaving him a parting gift. Elpam accumulates as much magic charge as possible into a fiery arrow in order to throw monsters as far as possible with one precise shot. He shoots at the monster, causing an explosion of enormous power. Then they fall into the river. The river is moving at high speed, and for now we can only wonder whether our heroes will survive. Luckily, they managed to survive, even though they were only a few steps away from death at the hands of the mad mushroom. The current weakened over time, slowing down its speed, thanks to which our heroes were able to get ashore. Debo displeasedly asks the main character, "What are you doing?" Elpam replies that he has already heard everything perfectly well. "This is the main monster. You need to prepare carefully to kill him. One mistake can cost them their lives." "Boss, did you say that as if we were going to hunt him, or did I misunderstand you?" said Debo, thinking that they will now try to escape from here. Elpam says that they will now hunt this monster. Shocked by this answer, Debo cannot believe his ears. He shouts at the main character, asking if he has gone crazy again. Elpam asks his partner why he is shouting. Didn't they come here to hunt monsters? Debo replies that he didn't know then that the mushroom was so dangerous, and even more so, Elpam generally knows at least something about tactical retreat. Elpam calmly says that if they leave the gate, they will no longer be able to return here. Hell, Debo already knows this. They're no longer bait. Doesn't that mean it's time for them to get out of here? How is Elpam even going to win if his arrows were useless against this creature? Is this a way to say goodbye to life? These are the questions that worry our Debo, and he can be understood because he miraculously survived. Elpam says that the situation has changed. Their competitors have left, which means they are the only two left here. Besides, they also made money. Isn't that great? Or is Elpam wrong? If so, then Debo can terminate their contract at any time. No one forbids him to do this. One thing is clear. Despite the rather complex character of the young man, Elpam always managed to turn the situation in his favor, each time reminding him of the termination of the contract. Debo says that's not what he meant. They need to make more money, right? Exactly, because this is what they came here for, especially since they have no competitors left. Now they can take everything that is in this forest. Okay, Debo understands that the main character intends to kill the main monster, but he asks him to explain how they will kill this monster if any attacks are useless. Fighting him is like dooming yourself to certain death. Is there really a way to defeat the monster, since Elpam feels so calm? Meanwhile, people are already starting to run out of the gate, which Abbas is very surprised at. Isn't that too fast for a gate for 40 people? A girl runs up to him and he asks what happened. Having quickly counted the people, he realizes that not everyone came out. The girl replies that the hunt failed. Dolan's team is killed, and Elpam and Debo are still inside. The rest were able to escape only because they became bait. On their own, even with a few dozen people, they would never have defeated the boss. It is clear from the menacing expression on Abbas's face that he is dissatisfied with this turn of the situation, because this is not the outcome he was counting on when he sent people to clear the gates. Did they really just run away? What was the reason for this? The girl replies that the boss turned out to be the mad poisonous mushroom, known for his cruelty. They had no choice but to run away as fast as they could. Abbas turns around and says it's time for them to leave. The girl does not understand why he is doing this and tries to stop him. She reminds him that Elpam and his partner are still alive because the gate is active. Abbas believes that these guys will not live long, because the girl herself said that the boss turned out to be the mad poisonous mushroom. If they want to wait for them, well, no one is stopping them. And Abbas has better things to do than stand around. Damn useless idiots, the situation is not encouraging. Abbas, as a person with vast experience, knows one thing. A person with a second circle will never be able to kill this insane creature. So their outcome is a foregone conclusion. But he also doesn't need those who can only run away. Abbas wants someone on his team who can accomplish the impossible. Yes, Abbas has lost faith in him, but Elpam does not intend to give up so easily, since he came here to kill the monster. Then he will do it, no matter how difficult it will be for him. It's time to start the hunt. With these thoughts, the main character releases a fiery arrow. The arrow flies down with great speed. Compared to other bosses, this one is very fast and tough. The matter is complicated by the fact that toxic fumes emanate from it. All that remains is to keep your distance and fire from afar. With the current level of fire arrow, this is problematic, but thanks to telekinesis, he can rotate the arrow at high speed, thereby increasing its penetrating power. Essentially, the arrow turns into a bullet. In Maple's world, only he can use this method, which allows him to accomplish the impossible. He even gave this unusual method a name, Revolver, which is how he called his trick that turns a fiery arrow into a bullet. The main monster notices that a fire arrow is flying towards him. Due to the enormous speed, the monster does not have time to dodge, and the arrow hits him in the chest. The creature screams in frantic pain. The arrow does not stop there, but continues to rotate at tremendous speed. Thanks to the rapid rotation, the arrow passes through the body of the crazy mushroom after a couple of moments. However, it doesn't end there. The arrow not only passes through the monster, but also through the trees behind the monster. Elpam wanted to pierce the head and core with one shot, but missing slightly, he hits the monster in the shoulder, creating a through wound. Monstro notices where he was shot from. He begins to run on all fours like a rabid animal. The main character tries to hit him again, but this time the monster dodges. Although a fiery arrow spinning in flight has great power, there is one drawback. It cannot easily adjust the direction of the arrow. In addition to this, the skill has a reset. He understands that he needs to put an end to the crazy mushroom before it recovers. Elpam again tries to hit the monster, but this time the creature manages to dodge the blow. However, the guys have everything figured out. For a few more moments, the creature mindlessly runs forward, thinking only about how to deal with the man above. Elpam realizes that this is the right moment and orders Debo to act. The young man clutches the thick rope as tightly as possible. Trying not to get into the monster's field of vision, he pulls the rope between the tree trunks as tightly as possible. He makes the perfect trap for the monster. This plan is working. Running at full speed, the mushroom does not notice the rope in front of it and stumbles over it. Unable to stay on his feet, he falls into the swamp. He soon rises to his feet. His entire body is covered with a thick substance, and our main character stands on top of a cliff. He just stands and watches what is happening below. The monster growls again. However, hearing a human voice behind him, the creature turns around and sees an axe flying into his face. Due to the fact that the monster fell into the swamp, he lost his mobility, causing Debo to hit him in the face. He then returns the axe to himself, leaving an even deeper cut on the monster. But it doesn't end there. Debo looks arrogantly at the monster and calls him over, inviting him to dance a bloody tango. The main character asks himself, is this enough to improve the situation? The essence of their plan is to lure the monster into the swamp. The golden rule of hunting is to deprive the prey of its strengths, so she will lose her main weapon. And now, the mud from the bottom of the swamp, like dozens of plugs, clogs the holes on the head of the mushroom, thereby depriving it of the ability to release toxic fumes. What? The holes are filled with dirt and nothing works? So this is wonderful. With these words, Debo firmly grabs the axe and points it towards the monster. Putting as much force into the blow as possible, it hits the creature. The monster manages to block the attack with its hand. Debo does not stop there, and at a wild pace begins to strike at the creature, which is desperately trying to defend itself with its hands. The mushroom waits for the moment when the guy stops attacking and tries to attack him, but the creature fails. Elpam drove the monster into the swamp, not only so that the holes would become clogged. For an opponent who relies on his speed, this is the most unpleasant place. Due to the large amount of thick mud at the bottom, the monster's legs seem to grow into the ground, and he cannot move. Now is the perfect moment for the protagonist to shoot. The monster understands that he cannot escape, and by raising his hands up, he tries to protect himself from a direct hit. The arrow continues to pass through the monster's body. Meanwhile, Debo watches what is happening. He looks towards the monster and wonders if he died. Through the thick smoke, he notices the silhouette of a mushroom, and realizes that the monster turns out to be too alive, and he can't just get rid of it. Elpam orders his partner to attack the monster's core, which is located in the head. Debo immediately begins to carry out the order. A little more, and the sharp blade of the axe at great speed plunges straight into the monster's head. But suddenly the monster intercepts the guy's weapon. He was clearly not ready for this. The situation gets even worse when the mushroom suddenly pulls Debo towards it. Elpam uses telekinesis. Thanks to the power of the ring, he lifts a huge log from the bottom of the swamp. This log flies into the monster's face. The monster immediately throws the log aside. He begins to look around while behind him, Debo prepares for another attack. First, he hits the monster on the head. He then jumps away to a safe distance. Now he looks around to assess his surroundings. Seeing several stones around the monster, Debo uses them to quickly move to another point. The main character then uses the power of telekinesis. It lifts a huge amount of swamp water into the air. Swamp water mixed with mud falls on the monster. He notices a human silhouette through a layer of water. The mushroom immediately attempts to grab Debo with its clawed paw. However, the next second he discovers that there is no person in his way, and while he is trying to figure out where the prey went, Debo's axe is already approaching the monster's throat. "That's it, my friend. The end has come for you," Debo will say. With one quick and precise movement, he cuts off the monster's head in the blink of an eye. The head with its mouth open falls into the swamp. The body remains motionless. This battle was not easy for the guy. He had to work hard to achieve this result. But he did not forget about the main character, who more than once helped him in battle with his fire support and telekinesis. Elpam smiles, feeling relieved after the battle is over. But the next second the smile disappears from his face, and the calm look is replaced by incredible shock. Debo can't understand why Elpam is so excited, and at this very moment, the headless body of the monster begins to move towards the guy. The monster manages to deliver a strong blow to the back. Due to the fact that the attack was sudden, Debo releases the axe from his hands, and it flies several meters to the side. Even after losing its head, the monster emits a loud roar, which Elpam hears while at the top of the cliff. He can't understand why the monster is still alive. His head was torn off, so how does he still manage to move? He shoots a fire arrow at the place where the monster is standing. Because of the rising steam, for some time he does not see what is happening below. But soon he sees a headless monster running out of the rising steam. He realizes that there is something else that is causing the crazy mushroom's body to keep moving. He once again raises swamp water into the air, hoping to throw the mushroom down and bind him with mud. But the monster has slightly different plans. Using his restored agility, he jumps to the side. He puts his paws forward to cling to the cliff with his sharp claws. He manages to do this. Elpam only had one fire arrow left. There is no time for recovery, and it's pointless to shoot at random. At this moment, Debo comes to his senses after being suddenly stabbed in the back. He's damn angry because he put a huge amount of effort into dealing with this monster, and now it turns out that it manages to live without a head. No, he doesn't intend to just put up with it. Gripping the axe tighter, he uses the cutting explosion spell. The monster does not pay attention to the young man and continues to climb up. Thanks to this, he manages to cut off the lower part of the monster's body with a precise blow. The legs, thanks to which the monster evaded attacks many times, fall into the swamp. Debo thinks that such a serious injury as losing half of his body will clearly stop even such a monster as the mad mushroom. But everything turns out to be the opposite. The monster not only does not stop, he continues to climb the cliff with even greater speed. The situation is heating up every moment. Elpam shoots at the monster, but it manages to dodge. Suddenly, the main character notices something strange in the monster's chest area. Taking a closer look, he notices a clot of a strange substance that resembles a head. Now it becomes clear to him that this is the real head of the monster. Well, thanks for the tip. Debo wonders if the previous attack was a bluff. Elpam prepares his staff for a new attack. Due to the fact that some time passes, he manages to use telekinesis with a fire arrow. Using both of these skills, he fires a projectile directly at the monster's chest. The arrow hits the second head. After passing through the hidden head, the arrow finally passes through the body of the mad mushroom. Due to the enormous impact force, the monster's body is thrown back onto the shore. Poisonous gas begins to appear near Debo. He understands that he will not be able to escape due to the fact that he is in the swamp. Fortunately, the main character manages to save him a few seconds before the poisonous gas covers an impressive part of the swamp. He already thought that he would die, but Elpam was not going to lose his partner so easily. They watch as the purple gas spreads across the ground. Are they done with this monster now? Elpam answers in the affirmative. He praises Debo for a job well done. As soon as the poison stops coming out of the mana stone, it will take what it needs. It seems to Elpam that he is finished with the monster, but it is at this moment that a strange silhouette appears right next to him. Elpam's whole body instantly becomes covered with goosebumps, because without even turning around, he already feels a monstrous danger. Lost of legs, head, and with a huge hole in the center, the body of the mad mushroom is somehow still alive. The guys notice a red ball in the monster's body, which turns out to be the core. It is for this reason that the body, which has lost almost everything, with the exception of the arms, still remains mobile. Debo realizes that this is far from the end of the fight, because they need to somehow deal with the monster again. The story continues in the city. Abby's reports to Larkana about what happened at the gate. Hearing the report, Larkin laughs, asking Abbas if he really just left the guys to their fate. So you continue to be stubborn? Larkana asks, still laughing. Abby's asks for forgiveness for what happened, and says that this matter should be entrusted to the Knights of Cygnus. Ordinary adventurers are unlikely to be able to cope with this. He is distracted by a sudden knock on the door. He says he is busy and asks not to come here. Despite the warning, the man who knocked on the door enters the office, which Abbas is clearly not happy about. However, his dissatisfaction disappears the moment he sees who decided to come into his office. This person turns out to be the main character, who has returned from a mission. Seeing the young man, Larkana smiles. Now this guy interests him even more. At first, he turns out to be the only one who survives the expedition with Shev's team. Now he has returned from a mission that several dozen other adventurers failed to complete. There is genuine interest in his eyes,